Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. And thank you so much for joining us today for this webinar on unlocking demand for plastics market and scale. Before we dive in, I'd like to just take just a few minutes to introduce myself and the organization behind this initiative. I'm Nanau, and I work under the Climate Center of Excellence here at NSRCL, the Entrepreneurship and Innovation Center of IIM Bangalore. NSRCL has been building India's startup ecosystem for over 2 decades. Our mission has been to catalyze entrepreneurship by bringing together entrepreneurs, academia, and industry, and to foster research in entrepreneurship. We are proud to be one of India's most established and respected incubation centers. Next slide, please. The scale of what we have built together speaks for itself. We have engaged with 238,000 plus entrepreneurs through various programs, workshops, masterclasses, and events. 7,445 plus startups have been impacted across 14 of our programs, which are ongoing for early revenue and scale startups. 35,500 plus jobs have been created by entrepreneurs after participating in NSRCL programs. And we have a combined valuation of 7 billion USD of the startups that we have incubated. Today's webinar is being hosted as a part of our flagship program called the Circular Bharat Accelerator, or CBA, which is India's first industry government partnership to accelerate entrepreneurship in circularity. This program brings together a powerful coalition of partners, Niti Aayog and the Atal Incubation Mission as our government partners, Hindustan Unilever Limited and their Project Circular Bharat initiative as our industry partners, and NSRCL IIM Bangalore as the incubation partner, and Zentio as our co-design and outreach partner. For this particular program, we are working in the circular economy, sustainability, or resource efficiency space, and looking for startups that are at an early revenue or revenue stage with a technological readiness level of TRL5, must be pilot ready, and are actively seeking GTM strengthening pilots or partnerships, and are willing to engage meaningfully in sessions and ecosystem forums. The sectors that we are currently specifically looking for this particular program are plastic circularity and sustainable packaging, reuse, refill, and alternate delivery systems, circular supply chains and resource efficiency, e-waste and electronic circularity, textile, and next generation materials. If your startup fits the profile, I strongly encourage you to apply. The application deadline is 16 March, which is very soon. Just give me a second, sorry. Really sorry. So you can scan the QR code, which is being shared on your screen right now, to access the application form directly. And with that, let's get into today's webinar. I'll hand it over to Nihal to introduce the panel today.
Thank you so much, Nanau, and I think super excited to be talking to three stalwarts of the industry in Jabir, Chinmaya, and Saurabh. I think we'll spend about 45 minutes today, just maybe going back and forth on, I think, some things that we think are relevant for startup founders out there. Today's audience is, of course, largely founders, but I'm sure there's ecosystem players who've joined as well. And so in that sense, I think why we do these kind of webinars is to really be able to bring insight and thought leadership to startups so that they are aware of what's going on in the industry and kind of pivot and orient themselves better, right? So my name is Nihal. Quick introduction from my end. I head the Climate Center of Excellence that we're building here at NSRCL. For the past 5-6 years now, we've recognized the need for community-specific interventions in the world of climate tech, mobility, deep tech, etc. And that's what Nana was talking to you about in terms of CBA, the program, where we genuinely believe that circularity innovations today are very geographically concentrated in specific areas, but real scale for the world of circularity only comes when you're able to take it pan-India and possibly even make in India for the world. So one of the focus areas for this program, of course, has been bringing GTM access and creating that kind of pan-India network in the world of circularity. But of course, we recognize that I think there are many different let's say, gaps in the ecosystem, which very honestly can also be looked at as opportunities. And I think it's through insights and discussions like this that we're super excited to maybe bring some of those thoughts on what the opportunities, gaps, etc., in the ecosystem might exist. And so, in that regard, just I think formally welcome to Chinmaya, Jabir, and Saurabh to the panel. How I'd love to do this is just throw the question out to each one of you by way of an introduction. Little bit of who you are, how you came into the world of circularity. I think will be fantastic for the audience to get to know you a little bit, along with maybe what you believe the next 5 odd years of the world of circularity really holds. I think maybe Jabir, we can start with you as a founder who's been at this for more than 12, 13 years.
Yeah, thanks. Nihal, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, um, yeah. I run an organization called Grainworms. Started 12 years ago. Um, how I got into this space, post the college, want to do something meaningful in life. Was figuring out some sector. Found garbage at a good intersections. I always want to do something in the development, the development sector. So found this garbage has got a different intersection of environmental impact, social impact. Even I also wanted to build a self-sustainable, a social entrepreneur. I mean, the concept of social entrepreneurship actually attracted me, and I want to build something self-sustainable in a way. So I found garbage maybe a futuristic business opportunity too. So it has environmental impact, social impact, a potential future business. So this is how I got into this. Um I started as a waste collector, a door-to-door waste collector in a just outskirts of Coimbatore city. I work with this informal waste pickers for that's what I have prior
Just a second, Jabir. I don't know if it's just me. I think we're losing you a bit.
Yeah, there's some issue with the Jabber's audio.
Yeah, I think now we can. Can you try now?
Yeah, yeah. Am I
Perfect.
audible now? Better now?
Yeah, better.
Yes, yes.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, I have no prior experience in in terms of subject as a waste management or plastic waste as a whole. Because I have not I don't have an experience in running or building a business also. It has been so quite challenging as an entrepreneur who has to deal with two issues at the same time, to learn more about the subjects, and to improve, develop this technical and subject expertise at the same time, building a business also. So I started with around 300 kg per day, way back in 2014. Now I'm doing 300 metric tons per day. Started with around 4 feet people. Now we have around 900 people across in, directly I'm employing around 900 people. So yeah, it has been pretty interesting journey. Uh,
Yeah, I think for those of you that do not know, Greenverb's probably one of the largest startups in the sector, and I think they've scaled massively over the many years that they've been operating, and it's a very cool journey, Jabir. But just on what do you think the next 5 years of the world of circularity might look like? Maybe few predictions, famous predictions. The predictions never go down well, but give us something to play
yeah,
with.
yeah. See, rather than predict, I think what I have seen in the last 10 years, as someone who was keep an always in the sector, eyes and ears sector, I see a very good potential, really, I would say a lot of private capital is coming to the space. Earlier, it was more of a public sector business, whether it's collection or uh, more private
I don't
coming
know,
towards
Jabir,
the.
your audio is again bad. It's I don't know what it is. There's some clicks. Can you just try now?
Nihal, issue? Same issue?
Yeah. Yeah, there's some disturbance of some kind.
Hello?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Nihal, you go.
No, but
ahead.
I think we can hear you. We can hear you now very well.
Okay. See, what I was saying that, there was a lot of public focus, as a subject. Now I see a lot of private capital moving into this. So that is a really, in terms of business, I think it's really a sign in terms of whether from investors, whether from brands, everybody, I mean, I see shift. I think that's a very good opportunity for the entrepreneurs to come and because a lot of limitations in the public sector. So that is maybe I think a bigger shift is going to happen now.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Jabir. I think from a startup perspective to maybe now somebody who will buy the startup solution, a corporate perspective. Chinmay, do you want to jump in quick? Maybe a few words on how you got into this world, what you do at Godrej, of course, how you're linked to the world of circularity, and some thoughts on what the future might look like.
Yes, so first of all, thanks, Nihal, thanks for inviting me for this session. I'm now, I mean, in the last couple of years, you might have seen a sudden spike in the sustainability forums, and so I get to attend a lot of these discussions. This one is particularly, it's different in nature because there are people who are aspiring to enter into this category are there, and I'm sure that there will be a lot of new ideas that would be churning up, and which is what was quite exciting for me. I really would like to know what people are thinking of it, and what is the offering that they have. I mean, what is the fresh perspective that they want to add here. But starting with my introduction, hello everyone, I'm Chinmay Dandekar. I work with Godrej Consumer Products. So my designation is kind of double hatting. So I am a principal research scientist, come a general manager. Yeah. So and I'm a packaging technologist by profession. So around 20 years back, I started my journey with Cadbury's, and now it's which is what is Mondelez, right? And for past 15 years, I'm actually working with Godrej Consumer Products. So I have fair bit of experience, I would say, of food industry, personal care, household insecticides, hair care, and when I entered this industry at that time, sustainability was the word that was getting picked up. Now what I hear is the world that has got transformed into circularity, right? And sustainability, when we used to hear as a buzzword, it was basically for two reasons. When I started my career, so at that time it was more on one is creating a product differentiation, right? And the second one was obviously about efficiency improvement, because something under you do under sustainability is obviously about reduction, and that reduction leads to some kind of a cost improvement. So a lot of sustainability initiatives ultimately turned out to be a cost improvement kind of an initiative. Now the scenario has changed, right? And what we are actually discussing is circularity. And when we say circularity, is where what you're actually trying to build is, what you are understood is non-renewable resources, how we can kind of get into a circular kind of an economy, and creating a real value for that material. And this is actually a pivotal moment of two things, right? The EPR is obviously globally taking traction, right? And in India, we are actually leading in terms of creating those EPR forums globally, right? But the second important part that has happened in last 15 years, 15 days, right? With this crisis situation emerging, and what we are actually finding is the virgin material is very difficult to get, right? And that is where a lot of businesses were actually kind of hesitant to get into recycled stream, are now finding a lot of potential into circularity, because one day everyone knows that one day all these non-renewable resources will be exhausting. So I'm coming to actually the second part, Nihal, that you were about to ask about where you see the future. So future on circularity, definitely, I mean, it's going to stay much, much more relevant as the time progresses.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Chinmay, and great to have you. Sort of jumping to you, I think as corporates and startups, that most of these people are focused on building the solution, taking it to consumers. But if there's anybody who can back it all up, it's a venture capital firm. How is it that you stumbled into this world? Of course, I know you've been in the world of investments for a long time. You directed at Circulate Capital in that sense is a massive. This area is a massive thesis, but how did it all start? Some thoughts on what the future might hold. Yeah.
Thanks. First of all, thanks, Nihal, Chinmay, and Jabir. I think I'll start off with saying I fully agree with what Jabir and Nihal has said, specifically in the context of last 15 days as well. So if I could answer your second question first, that what is the world I look for in next 5 years? I imagine what Jabir was saying, that let's say $1 billion deal in a circularity space, which we all be able to do. That means that the sector has grown significantly, the companies have matured. So that is one dream which I personally have. Second, everybody, circularity is not a side of topic like what AI or SaaS is right now. Your milk packets, what you are drinking, you are well aware of that they are probably recycled and coming back to you. Your biscuit pouches, your shampoo bottles, everything, people, even your cars, to be honest. So when the consumer is aware of that whatever they are using is coming back, somebody is recycling, somebody is collecting it, somebody is then recycling it, and somebody is actually finishing it and selling it. So that entire ecosystem is at play. What happening is right now is that the brands, recyclers, and probably funders like it, which are very few, they are acting at a play, but consumers are not pretty much aware about, right? So that is
Yeah.
one dream which we all have in the next 5 years. I just to introduce myself, I am Saurabh, based out of Mumbai, part of Circulate Capital. Circulate Capital is one of a kind private equity firm which backs circular economy. So that's our thing, that's our mandate. Our funders are people like Godrej, not them specifically, but corporate LPs like Unilever, Hindustan Unilever, Pepsi, Coke, Mondelez, Chanel, Dow, and of course your financial institutions like IFC, Proparco, governments, British government, etc. They give us money to kind of solve the plastic problem. Plastic is one part of circular economy. Now we are a $450 million fund. We are operating in Southeast Asia as well as Latin America, Caribbean, India being one of our key theses. We started investing in India 5 years back, and some of the large seven, eight companies which are now catering to the sector are in our portfolio. So yeah, happy to be part of this forum and looking forward to the questions, Nihal.
Fantastic. Thank you, Saurabh. I think I'm just going to jump right in, guys. I think in the interest of time, so, maybe Jabir with you, because you wear the founder hat, and you started quite some time back when probably circularity was not called circularity. I think maybe you thought of it as going into the waste business more than anything. You spent 12 odd years, or even more, maybe at least thinking about all of these things. Today, a company with top line of almost 100 CR. So, what I'm really interested in is how you kind of thought through the solution. Was it innovation first, or did you just go in and say, I will somehow find a problem that I can try and look for and pivot from there? And having spoken to you, I know especially how, in your case, you chose to have this vertical specific growth strategy, right? So you said things along the line of building region specificity first, because OpEx and operations would be easier. Even in terms of the type of waste you zoned in, versus you, because you had this question where easily the fork in the road was go vertical or look at many different types of waste and so on and so forth. So give us, I think, how you give us a sense of how it was to how where it is and how you thought through some of these challenges.
Yeah. Thanks, Nihal. Am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible.
Yeah. So Nihal, it's a good question actually. It was mostly so when I just wanted to work as a waste as a sector, you know, So I started with collecting all kinds of waste and the basic stuff. But over a period of years, the business model has completely changed. What I started in 2014 is, and what I my revenue model, my business model, everything has completely changed what I do today. So it was a big evolution, in a way. So I had a lot of interesting, insights during this journey. So as a sector only, I started off. Then I was figuring out what business model works in the sector, what business model works and what didn't work specifically. And so actually I started with just collecting garbage from some of the bulk waste generators, the cities, and especially some of the bulk waste generators. And my revenue model was just charging a user fee from subscription fee from households, commercial establishments specifically. And then I realized that maybe so that's the first revenue model. Though I started in some wrong geography, I had to shut down operation the first 2 years. I have to move to cities because I realized that semi-urban centers or rural centers are not willing to pay for the service. Only the city centers are willing to pay for it. So that's the first revenue streams which I had started. Only 10% was the second revenue was selling some of the recyclable fractions of it. That was around 10% of revenue. But over a period of years, now I have around seven revenue streams. uh, you know uh, so the idea is that I realized that, so there were two things we were looking at it. One, how do we make these whole projects commercially viable? From the day one, I was able to solve this waste as a technical issue. Whatever the waste I was able to collect, I was able to process it either for recycling or composting and whatever the value addition. Nothing was going to landfills, but commercially it was not viable. So from the day first onwards, it was how do you make it economically viable, and how do you crack the unit economics of it. So that's where we realized that a single buckets of revenue is not enough. So that's begin in 2017 and all. That's the time the EPR has come to the place. In 2020, because of compliance factor, 2020 we got some deals in terms of plastic credits. Exporting some plastic credits to the new markets as a voluntary markets in terms of that. Then we have seen a shift in a lot of non-recyclable fraction as an alternative fuel in cement kilns. Then, as an alternative fuel industries, we have seen a lot of cement plants started adopting it. Now we see a last few years we see a huge shift in recycled resins, post-consumer recycled resins. So the journey has been mostly in terms of looking at what's on the one hand, looking at what is the market demands, what is the opportunity of the market, what is the market demands in terms of willingness to pay, in terms of requirements and all. At the same time, looking at inwards in terms of how can you ensure that that is being able to meet. So I
So
have done.
if I may double click there, Jabi. So your first source of revenue, very subscription-ish, to now seven sources. And so what dominates? What is your what does that portfolio of revenue streams look like?
So yeah, it's around 33% of revenue still comes from the B2G segments, government sectors, because now we take, rather than we individually work with certain commercials and households, we take up the whole municipalities and city corporations now as their waste management contracts. So we still charge a fee from the government agencies, which is around 33% of it. Then we have, as I said, a B2B segments of it. That's the second one. The third, especially, we started aggregating. We work with around 9,000 waste collectors. We started aggregating a lot of recyclable materials from that, both from formal and informal value chain, mostly from informal value chain. So that is selling the recyclable piece of it. Fourth is selling this alternative fuel to cement kilns as an AFR, as an alternative fuel to factories. Fifth is the recycled, so we started producing some high quality post consumer resins. That's the fifth one. Sixth is selling the carbon, plastic credits and EPR credits in, both domestic and international markets. We just started even, textile waste recovery facility. So textile waste is also new revenue streams which we are working on. We're going to set up
Interesting.
India's first shoes recycling facility now. It will be ready in 2 months of time. So it is that we're looking at now materials as rather than a waste management company, a material science company. In that way, that's the kind of vision. We the moments how do what we have a huge feedstock now. Then
Yeah.
how do we create more value out of the wastage? And
Yeah.
also reduce dependencies on government funding also going forward. That's a broader.
And surely, like when you started, I mean, maybe the takeaway for a young startup is surely when you started, you never even thought that the plan was never to get here, right? To have six, seven different, to be a material science company in the first place, which means like that pivot journey. how often was that pivot journey to be able to arrive at this kind of 7 different revenue models?
So Nihal, there are two aspects which I realize over, one is of course innovation and research. I mean, so continuously you need to improve. I mean, for example, I would say in 2017-18, Indian EPR was 70% of my revenue. Now, not even 2% of my total revenue. So I realized that a lot of things, certain things become obsolete also. Some things are also emerging also. So we need to continuously in terms of innovate and research what's going to come in the next, right? I mean, that's one piece of it. And second, inwardly, how do you reduce the cost of it, or how do you improve the efficiency piece of it? you know so broadly, so that's only innovating, because I knew that something may work today, may not work tomorrow. And that's things, I kept on improvising and innovating in a way, so new business model may catch up, and at the same time expanding the other business model which has already proven also.
So respond to the market. I think more than anything, just respond to the market and be willing to be flexible. And because especially in a world like circularity where there's so much flux policy wise, I mean now suddenly there's EPR and so everyone's talking about that. I think to be able to adapt fast is equally a big skill compared to I don't know, a traditional MSME that might operate in trading or whatever. So yeah, fair enough. Thank you so much, Abid. Chinmay, I think for startups nowadays, an interesting or rather a big revenue source has become corporates themselves. There's obviously compliance that drives it, but equally corporates want to be able to brand as tech first. Corporates want to be able to, in some sense, also show that there is a certain amount of focus for a greener world, which means they also like imbibe these values into philosophy and so on and so forth, especially with consumer brands. How is it in the world of Godrej? And if you can just give us a sense of, I have two questions for you, but first we'll start with if you even talk to these startups, what is a Godrej like kind of looking at? Are there specific areas, or are there certain signals in terms of the founder that you want to engage with that you feel this is the right founder to bet on? If you can just give us a sense of how you're thinking as a leader as well as a FMCG giant.
Yeah. So, I guess I would look at it more from three pillars, right? One is, on overall sustainability or circularity, I guess. The first one you can say on compliance, the second on cost, and the third one is consumer trust, or I would say the third C is actually credibility, right? And let us deal with it one by one. So, when I say compliance, so what opportunities that I see here is, how do we bring, how do we first of all contextualize our products applications in terms of regulations? Like, when you said that you are developing something which is biodegradable, something which is bio-based, bio-derived, or say something which is a mono material or say recyclable, right? Each one actually has a very different context, and we actually deal with a lot of these startups also. We see there is a bit of misalignment on what someone feels as circular, someone feels as recyclable, even, or say biodegradable, right? So and there are definitions to it, there are standards to it. So first of all, it's very much important that there is a compliance to these standards, because what we find is, when we deal with a lot of these startups, that maturity in terms of understanding under what context their product fits into, that understanding sometimes is kind of lacking. So while you develop a product, you also understand what is your offering, what is its application area. You read relevant standards, what are the standards which are applicable in the Indian context, in terms of regularity, what are kind of regulations that exist in India, and how also world is moving around it, right? Because now there are even Indian EPR rule, what we frame, what is European regulation is saying, because obviously some of these solutions you can actually implement in the multiple geographies, right? So while you take it also. And this is a problem that I'm not just seeing in India. I mean, there is a lot of this confusion that keeps on happening even globally. So some of the startup experiences that we had in India, it's so much relevant even in European context, because some of these definitions, even they are missing the context. Yeah. So I guess what is required first of all is to contextualize your offering. The second thing is also about the cost, and if there is something that is developed only for, say, a claim purpose, then it's a branding initiative, right? Once CPR has actually got implemented, this has actually came into a compliance or kind of a mandate, right? And when you're actually meeting the mandate, there is no provision for passing on this cost to a consumer, right? And
Right.
especially the products that we operate into, these are not a luxury products, right? These are actually catering to day-to-day needs of a consumer. And if we pass on any of these green premiums to consumer, right, consumers obviously have this feeling that inflation is rising, right? This is something that you really don't want to do. So while you do this products development, the cost angle is very much important. And at a startup level, you have to link that cost with scalability. You have to always apply that scalability principle that, once you make it to certain scale, will you be able to reduce the cost or not? And some of the offerings for which scalability against cost reduction is not achievable, uh, these are actually red flags. If you are saying that, one, in spite of making it scalable, you will not be able to make it affordable, then I guess this would always remain some kind of a pilot experiment for a lot of corporates, but it will never get into a full-fledged implementation on a particular brand. And
Understood.
third, shall I continue?
Yeah,
So
go ahead, third.
and on the consumer trust or credibility front, so consumer trust is one aspect wherein, when you say addition of, say, recycled content into packaging, right? Consumer obviously looks at it with some kind of a suspicion that, I am pretty, I didn't ask for it, right? I want this to be into best of the material, right? So,
Fair enough.
but so while we do that, what are the kind of checks that we put into place? So quality checks. So what is the investment that you are doing in terms of ensuring that, I mean, if I'm buying, say, a virgin polymer, I never get into that, what is the kind of contamination level that a virgin polymer has, how much
Yeah.
phthalate content it would have, right? So how much limonene it would have. But if I'm buying a PCR, I'm obviously compelled to ask this, right? So the kind of checks that you would kind of do on virgin against PCR, that would be completely different, right? So a
Correct.
lot of this investment that happens even from the corporate fund, but equally that the expectation is that, when you dispatch the material from your factory, that kind of a check has already happened onto it. So something like that is kind
Understood.
of
And so, is it possible to maybe take an example of a venture or that you've engaged with that has done successfully or done well? And maybe the second part of the question that I really had for you is, what are these areas, right? I think one way is to just say, look, I'm a startup in the world of circularity, and I think Godrej should consume my solution. The other way is to know that Godrej already has certain priority areas that you're working down on, so on and so forth. So maybe if you can give us a sense of what these priority areas are, and equally that previous question on, maybe because one of these startups came in and solved for a priority area, this one case of a startup or whoever that's doing really well because they were able to kind of solve a inherent need that Godrej had. Anything along these lines?
Yeah. So see, our sustainability pillars are basically three. Starting with plastic intensity reduction, then we say uh, addition of recycled content into your packaging, and making your plastic packaging recyclable, right? While the latter two are linked to circularity, right? The first one is a foundation, because what we have seen is, when you perform LCA, right, the latter to have a limited impact, but the first one is any kind of a material reduction, not just plastic intensity, but any material intensity that you reduce. You are able to kind of bring down your operational costs. You are able to bring down your GHG emissions, right? So it has got a lot of impact on the environment in that context. So anything that helps us in terms of optimizing your material is something that we prioritize. And we had taken this initiative of bringing down our plastic intensity by 20% at the target that we had taken in 18-19. We achieved that target much ahead of our deadline of 2025. We actually achieved it a year back uh, to meet it, and now we have taken the overall target of material intensity reduction, rather than just saying that we would be doing a plastic reduction. But specific to plastic, now there's two areas wherein making 80% of our plastic recyclable, and the second opportunity is addition of recycled content in your packaging. What we have actually seen is, while you deal with polymers, these are not going in hand. The EPR compliance is saying that you add plastic a recycled content into your packaging, right? Which is largely happening into PET and the polypropylene HDP, largely on the monomaterial space. Now the challenge that happens on the flexibles area. Flexibles, you have uh, all the uh, all the monomaterial solutions which are available in the zone of polyolefins, right? And in the polyolefins, say polypropylene or say HDP or LDP, right? Those materials is where addition of recycled content we are finding a struggle. The struggle is much more bigger when it comes to polypropylene stream, where the only chemical recycled material is available. Now, chemically recycled material, we are also not sure, because the LCA impact of that material comes out to be significantly higher, right? And that is where the challenge that comes is, how do we reduce the material so that you don't end up into this dilemma? How do we have plastic alternatives in this space so that you don't live in this dilemma that whether I would be adding the recycled content or whether I would be making my material recyclable? Making material plastic free is something, a very no nonsense kind of a thing that we believe solves first level of your problem, right?
So there, Chinmay, if I can double click there, right? In maybe quick fire format, so that I can also jump to sort of some specific areas within material science that Coatridge is looking at. Any?
Yeah, so some kind of coatings that enables us, having a plastic-free kind of a solution, but which is having good kind of salability on one side, having good kind of a printability on the other side, right? So we did a lot of this experimentation even on the paper as a substrate, right? And how do we not engage into a virgin paper but getting into a recycled paper, so the paper also becomes circular? At the same time, it is at par with say plastic based materials in terms of aesthetics, in terms of salability, in terms of machinability. These are the opportunities that we want to kind of keenly pursue.
Perfect. I think jumping to Saurabh, and I know that some people are commenting, etc. We will definitely take questions, so do put in your questions so that we can take them towards the end. Saurabh, your perspective on what the world of capital in circularity looks like, right? I think because you take these kind of parallels, you go to Europe and you're starting out as a circularity venture, it's pretty clear. You know that you will be in a university, you know that there will be a small grant that can come through that, then a larger grant through Horizon Europe, whatever it may be. So you get your first checks there, then VC can come in, you can then exit to an American VC. It's almost like the funding journey is predictable in certain markets. Good or bad, that's a different question. But like, how is it in the world of circularity in India? If you can just give us a mental picture, how can a founder envision his equity journey And I would even ask the question, is equity the only way? Are there other forms of capital that, depending on the type of business model stage, you've seen a lot of success with some examples, if at all?
Sure. Thanks, Nihal. So, I would slightly disagree with that. Its funding journey is very clear in Europe or the developed world, but that is a separate discussion. In India, I'll tell you, when we started 4 years back, the state of the sector, there were very few startups. Even banks will not give loans. The feedstock. So, let's say for an commodity company, steel is their feedstock or iron ore is their feedstock, which banks recognize as an inventory. Here, it's practically kachra, right? It's a waste. So they didn't recognize that as an inventory and refused to give loans. So we have came from that sector. So here, equity is not the only option. The sector is pretty open. There are a lot of technical grants or assistance available. We help. There has been corporates which help in these kind of grants. Like Chinmay was mentioning, they were looking for coatings. There are coatings company which probably grant or work with a corporate who's willingly help them with R&D, giving them feedback on what kind of product you are generating. So that's the kind of options available. And then there
This
is
is this is
a
R&D
depending
grant or this is CSR grant?
R&D grants as well, CSR grants as well, but CSR grants live their own life, has their own life, and you cannot survive, unfortunately, on CSR grant. That's good to start. But R&D grant, the grants like this, which helps you develop your product, is what happens is, let's say, for example, if you develop it with Godrej, develop it with Unilever, they'll come back and buy your products, and then your business model is scalable. And that's where you earn money, and that's where the model itself is circular and sustainable. So that's what we focus on. You asked me there are other options, what kind of models so basically we look for in circularity, specifically in waste management, how's your feedstock tied up? Feedstock collection, which people ignore, is one of the biggest thing, right? Because the end product is not something that today I can write an invoice or PO to Nihal and Nihal can send me X tons of material. No, you will have to have collect that material. Some materials, PET, easier to collect than rest. Polyolefins, nobody is collecting. Imagine your दूध का theli or milk pouch, right? We all not even wash it. You just tear it, just throw it in your dustbin. Somebody basically now to recycle it have to collect it with your milk. It gives you pretty much very high odor. Somebody has to de-ink it. If you have noticed, your milk pouches a direct ink. So now to recycle it or to convert it into a granule, somebody needs to de-ink it. Then you have to wash, sort everything. You have to do de-ink it and then produce granules, which a brand can buy, right? Because if they don't buy at a mass scale, your business model will not be sustainable. All that you have to do in a cost which should match with virgin or lesser than virgin, right? We heard what Chinmay said. So that is the job of a recycler, and people like Jabir are doing a great stuff in kind of tying all these things together. And that is where, once that is tied up, we help them in scaling up. We help them in R&D grants. We connect them with our LPs who have kind of, one example being Lucro. Hindustan Unilever even came back and invested in them. It's one of the only case where a company has taken a stake in a packaging or a supply chain company. So they basically co-develop products with them. There are milk pouches are being recycled, and your non-food grade applications like your Surf Excel pouches are now contain PCR material in them, right? Your Coke and Pepsi are recycling. One of our company, Shri Chakra, is recycling PET. So all your Kinley bottles, Coke has some recycled content or 100% recycled content in them. We see brands are taking steps, right? Sprite, we are hearing that apart from green, they are coming with a clear bottle. So all these things exist. On the financing side, equity is one option where you kind of come in as a growth capital, set up more capacities, open the door for brands. Because see, one thing people also have to understand that growth will only come when brands buy, and brands will buy when you give them the clarity on feedstock and on your output. So for that, you require capital, and that is where we come in. Right now, most of the options are open. Only thing is your business model should be sound and at least tied from both feedstock as well as on the processing side.
So let me double click exactly there, right? What is it that I mean, you don the shoes of an investor. So a startup talking to you should ideally be asking the question, what is the thesis and what are investors betting on in this area, right? And so tying that down to what you said on within the value chain, the top of the value chain itself needs a lot of solutioning, which is collection, traceability, feedstock being available. So if that value top of the value chain is only not solved, then and you are a deep science company solving for some polymer material, but the feedstock is not available, what is that point? So give us that worldview, thesis view on where you believe high ROI exists, both from maybe a business model innovation lens or maybe a tech innovation lens, so that ventures out there can kind of recognize the white spaces, so to speak.
Yeah. So it's not very complex as well. Also, Nihal. So ventures basically, as I said, it's pretty. So the material science will only come. Also, people like Jabir only talks about material science because they have material in their warehouses, and they have seen the material, and then now they want to innovate. That what should I do with this material? So, but yeah, what I said was that let's say collecting polyolefins in the country is pretty difficult. So if you want to do something with polyolefins, how do you collect that? There are no aggregator chain maybe readily available, or they are available at a higher cost. Should you invest in collection centers? Is that model? And when you integrate that collect those collection centers with your recycling infrastructure, are you able to wash sort those materials basically? Then you are able to process it at a price which is palatable to the brand, right? So those things are pretty important. And also, we are an impact investor. The even the money which you will get maybe for grants, it's an impact. So what impact you are showing, either in terms of your plastic collection, which is you are basically avoiding to going to landfills or oceans, the new capacity, the jobs you are generating, and the one of the important angle which all miss in all of this is the waste pickers, right? Ravi spoke about it. The living wages for those waste pickers. There is an important stat that in India, if an average lifespan is 73, 75 years, for a waste picker, it is only 37 years. So how do you increase the lifespan or living wages for them without compromising on the margins and basically palatable, the pricing which is palatable to your end consumers?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's enough cases in the likes of Hasirudala, etc., that are trying to even work in those markets. So,
Yes.
yeah, I think opportunities are definitely deep, but I think that's a great segue for me, Javi, to ask the same question, but from a founder lens, right? Because you're on the ground trying to solve for what you believe are live use cases and areas you're discovering on the go. You briefly mentioned, I think, can you look at shoes itself as a material, glass itself as a material? So what are these opportunities? And I also know that you said in a different conversation, process innovations themselves are actually a great space to be. So within sorting and building a machine for sorting and so on and so forth, right? And I know that there are areas in Gujarat, etc., where a lot of MSMEs are now coming out in areas like this. Can you give us your worldview? I think it'll be interesting for startups.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I think Nihal, there are a lot of areas of opportunities, like different part of the value chain, right? I mean, uh, for example, I mean, for door-to-door collection is a challenge in a lot of areas. I mean, there are a lot of innovation can be doable. I know there are people who just do collection and transportation piece much better way, much more efficient way. And secondly, though, if it's going for chemical recycling, the whole sorting, grading, it's bothly secondary sorting and grading and tertiary sorting and grading. There's a whole huge business opportunities. Because mostly as a country, we are mostly depending on mechanical recycling now. So sorting and grading is a big chunk. So there is a lot of optical sorters, NIR sorters, a lot of automations, because you in ice, you cannot touch and feel. You may not, you need machines and all. So a lot of, I've seen machines outside the country, so a lot of such, especially because maybe machines which may be available for PET or HDP in the world, but not for flexible films, right? Maybe to HDP films or PP films or LDP films, there are no, I don't see much of a machines, So I mean, there's a lot of sorting and grading, a lot of opportunities available there. That's a different business. Third, of course, when it comes to washing or extrusion, those kind of, for example, washing, as he's rightly said, print de-inking. Print is a big contamination. The inks are big contamination. So de-inking and de-printing is a big. It's going to be a lot of people are working on that. Deodorization is a big challenge. De-oiling is a big challenge. So not necessarily, for example, one is a good technical guy. So if you can solve this one of these specific piece, then you can go and work with the different recyclers in the value chain. Okay, I know this is a critical challenge. So certain thinking, and a lot of people are exploring chemical recycling now. For example, chemical recycling is going to be one of the very future of business now. It's a country where yet to figure it out in terms of predominantly it's all mechanical recycling. That's another pretty interesting segments. Then, for example, delamination. For example, multi-layer plastics or many other stuff. Delamination is going to be a big opportunities. Those kind of pieces there. And on the other hands, as I said, as you rightly said, there are a lot of different materials which is very low value materials, difficult to recycle material or non-recycled material. For example, PETs and all, people have solved the piece in terms of PET. Everybody is now working on the material intensity of the PET to some extent, maybe some part of HDPs and all. But it comes to flexible films, flexible films. I know cement people are working on cement to bag to cement bag, right? I mean, that's kind of because it's a very least recycled, very highly contaminated material. Um, so like there are a lot of materials within the plastics also when it comes to multi-layer plastics or HDP films, PP films, many other flexible film is a very good material. So you can look at it within the plastics. Other than plastics, I mean, you look at the plastics, for example, whatever I was talking about, shoes recycling. It's again another type of plastics. It's called a plastic called PU. It's a plastic called TPU. It's a plastic called EVA. It's a plastic called TPR. So it's another forms of and PU and all.
Yeah.
Nobody recycles in the country. It's much more. Shoes are. I mean, I don't see any rubber and leather. Less than 5% in all my waste which I get from shoes. Footwear waste. So it's one other forms of plastics only. Even comes to textile waste, it's mostly just not the cotton. The predominant it's mostly polyester, and polyester blend and other kind of materials. So you can either look at it, waste. I mean material also you can focus on some specific, materials also. For example, there are some companies who just work on mattress recycling. Mattress itself is a huge things that. So there are a lot of different people are working on agriculture waste. So
Yeah.
people are working on battery waste. So you can also look at, rather than doing everything, you can also specifically look at. I know a lot of companies are coming up in solar panels recycling, because in down 4 or 5 years down the line solar panel is going to come up, especially whoever we have invested in the past. So that's a huge, you can also look at, as I said, one is of course the whole value chain, different layers of value chain. You can see where do you fit in, you can, where do you fit in, how do you can innovate in, or add value to the existing value, whether it can be process, it can be machines, equipments, or even the process itself, like the chemicals, a lot of compounding, a lot of stuff kind of stuff. On the other side,
So,
you can.
okay, so can I ask, like, how do you build a framework for this? How do you, like, uh, low occurrence in nature, problematic versus non-problematic, easily recyclable versus non-recyclable? Like, how do you build a worldview of what is the right material to target? Maybe 2, 3 lines on that?
It's very simple, if there are two people sit here, for example, if Godrej is, for example, I am selling some of my LDPs, natural grade material to brands, right? But I am unable to sell my milk pouch to brands, right? Milk pouch deodorizations and ink contamination, because no brand is taking me a bet on milk pouch, my recycle, my post consumer resins of. So it is that whether any so-called big brands are, I mean, are they able to buy from you? So that means there is still some value addition needs to be done, because that's one test mark. On the other hand, like people like Saurabh is, willing to invest in me certain technologies, right? I mean, so is it a bankable, I mean, that also looks at it in terms of, what do they, I mean, so they also look at it, evaluate in a way that, a different sense in terms of your technology, your business models and all. So if these two people, in a simple framework, you see some investors in them, interest in terms of things, and a brand is willing to buy, then I would say there is your thesis is done in terms of, to work on one product or a business model.
Viability. Yeah.
In
At
terms
least
of
building
making,
MVP.
I would say, yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
fair enough. Perfect. Jabir, I don't know if I'm going to take the jibe and throw it at Chinmaya, which is why is Godrej not taking milk plastics, or at least, that brand of, plastics. But I think that actually allows me to ask the question, Chinmaya, on what is it? What is this Indian context? Because a lot of this, the reason why you're not able to take that is because of viability, even for you, right? And so, how is the Indian context slightly different from the maybe global context, especially in, I think, deep sciences, deep tech? We see that you have to be a lot of the R&D first thinking is outside, and then you try and bring that to India and try and build the innovation and take it to scale here. But the Indian context is so different. A lot of things are still manual. There's no availability of feedstock, so on and so forth. Through your journey as an FMCG, can you paint some light on what the Indian context looks like?
Yeah, I guess so. Nehal, it stems from, I would say, one is Indian. In the Indian context, if you look at it, it's largely driven by informal sector, which is your rat pickers, right? And PCR is the material on which I pay a very heavy premium as on date, right? What happens is how economics works. I'll just explain, because when I'm adding recycled content into my packaging, I'm actually not making it aesthetically very appealing, correct? Though I look at it, or my partners of EPR look at it as a value, right? My
Yeah.
consumer unfortunately doesn't look at it, right? And then I'm paying a
I don't know if it's just me. Have we lost him?
Yeah, not
Think we've
able to hear
lost
him. Yeah.
So maybe let's just wait. No, I think he's frozen. So maybe Saurabh, I can jump
Am
to
I
you at
audible
least
now?
okay, perfect. I think I
He's
can
audible.
hear you. Yes.
I guess there is some bandwidth issue, but
Yeah, you can.
yeah.
You
Hello?
were last saying that the way the consumer looks at it versus the way you look at it
No,
is
so
different.
yeah. So no, so what I was actually coming to is, when I'm trying to put PCR into it, the large risk that actually arises is, what I am actually using as PCR. Is that really a recycled material? Because if I'm using the recycled material into my packaging, okay, and if I'm getting a recycled content from two different vendors, okay, the the one I'm getting is is actually a greenwash material, which is largely a virgin polymer that someone is selling me, right? Which looks better compared to a actual PCR material, right? I'm paying a premium on that material, right? And then there is issue of credibility, correct? Because what happens is in the PCR audit, somewhere you would be actually seen as a defaulter, correct? In spite of paying that premium on that material. So as I actually said right in the beginning, there is some kind of an opportunity that exists that we want the entire sector to evolve in terms of mapping. So if we can have some kind of a mapping solution, say some kind of a digitized solution, wherein on one app kind of a platform, wherein you have your rack pickers, you have your aggregators, you have your recyclers, right? And you have your brand owners, right? Because a lot of these blockchain technologies that people talk about in the PCR context, right? It is not yet been evolved here is because there is no mapping, right? And there is a lot of this relevance when it comes to mapping and credibility, right? So this is something that is the first opportunity that I would say that if there is any startup who is working on that kind of an app, I mean definitely that's a big opportunity. The second opportunity that I look into is a decentralizing of a lot of these processing units, because getting a material from one corner of India and deploying it to the other corner, that becomes a big challenge because we don't want to pay a transport premium.
Right.
The one area that has been defined as addition is reusing your packaging material. Now the issue that has actually come in that area is how do you get a bottle from one corner of India and get it back to a central processing unit, right, where it would get. So we need a lot of these, uh, uh, some of this OEM sector to evolve. Who would do category specific aggregation. That say someone would do it for say liquid detergent, someone would do it for cosmetics, right? That and they would pick up this material, get it to their facility. They would have kind of a stable infrastructure for packing say liquid detergents, right? And they would have standard processing unit, which would be wherein they would be able to clean the bottles and they would be able to refill it. Then I guess this makes more sense, because we are actually trying to see that why refill is not making a sense in Indian context, because India is a huge geography, right? And if you are actually trying to transport these empty bottles from one end of
I think we lost him again.
scope for decentralization.
Yeah, I think we lost you again, Chinmaya, but I think we got most of that point. Do you want to turn your video off and just quickly conclude that in maybe a few sentences?
Yeah, sure. So I guess three areas I would say largely. One is, the digital integration that I spoke about, and then decentralizing processing units, both for say
Yes.
a refill kind of stations and then PCR manufacturing, right?
Yeah.
And then we also see that there is great scope, as Jabir also discussed, that chemical recycling of low grade plastics
Absolutely.
that exists. Yeah.
Perfect. I think one last question before we open it up to the audience to Saurabh. Saurabh, as an investor, you have your eyes peeled for how the regulatory landscape looks. Essentially, any tailwind that helps you as an investor as well as startups kind of come in and solve for certain areas, I think are of super help. And in that sense, we know, of course, the APR discussion has been going on for a while now, and we're all keen to see how that kind of unfolds. But can you give us a sense of this? What is happening? Also, there's also world events happening, supply chains breaking down, all of this. Give us a little bit of sense on how this might look in the near future, so that startups can also kind of keep that at the back of their mind as they're innovating.
Sure. So Nihal, EPR, like we all are aware, it's one of the evolved system across globe actually. Even Southeast Asian countries are looking at EPR, Indian EPR mandates and kind of replicate them or kind of tweak them, etc. So Indian EPR, we are all aware. One advice to people who are looking at EPR from startup angle is that look at it as an initial viability gap funding, that just to start up, that amount of money which is coming to you is VGF, then your product should actually be self-sustainable. But apart from that, one of the biggest tailwind which we are seeing and which is now evolving is basically the minimum regulatory MRC, which is minimum recycled content in your packaging, right? Whether it's rigids or flexible. So that is something which brands are now complying with. They are very happy to kind of adopt it. It has to come from this year, but some bit of dilution or maybe next year, for a few next years, it will definitely come up. So that is one big thing. Recyclers have a huge opportunity because certain percentage of 10 to 30% of your packaging is mandated to use that recycled content. Brands will support you. You need to be ready with your capacity. So that is a big thing. Not only in plastic, CPR is coming up in your e-waste, which is big textile, not textiles, but tires, used oil, automobile, end of life vehicles, everything. So Indian government is basically picking up EPR, your sanitary waste, sanitary napkins, everything is, so that's a big tailwind in that respect. Your second question on what is happening, I think this might be, we are hoping that it is a basically very temporary phase. While virgin prices have gone up and recyclers might benefit, but the other side of it is that if there is no virgin available or it is at a higher cost, recycled content at current state needs to be mixed with virgin. So what time or at what stage it will take us, but yeah, current thing is mostly temporary. Overall, I think we should get to normal in another month's time. That is what we can say right now.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I would say to all three panelists, but it's been, I think, super insightful. I will take a few questions, however, before we conclude. I'm just going to chat. And so Pradeep HN asks, what are your thoughts on the need for green innovation and what are the gaps that need to be addressed in making circularity more efficient and efficient as in cost efficient? Um, maybe Jabir, few thoughts from you as a startup who's probably in some sense having to work on efficiencies and costs.
The question was around.
So he's essentially saying what are the gaps that need to be addressed in making circularity more efficient and cost efficient, which means in what sense, how does a startup define pricing, which means who are your target customers, are you able to bring costs down? Because I think there is a general consensus in the market that there is greenwashing and green premiums, and do I have to pay more money for something that is green, etc. How do you kind of beat that storyline? How do you bring prices in and make it affordable to the masses? And also, I don't know exactly what he means by efficiency in circularity. Probably just that there is in collection leakage and there's pilferage and things like that. So yeah.
Yeah. See, I think it's a very myth that brands or people will pay a premium for any sustainable products. I mean, at least in a massive scale, you may get hundreds or thousands of kgs. When it goes to really good volumes, you need to both piece you need to balance in a way. If they need really high quality materials, as however the brand say they need near virgin grades material, but of course with a competitive pricing. You can't they won't be able to okay with a really very very premium price. So you need to find that balance of at least but they don't I mean, so it's not that you have your product has good really high good quality, they will pay for that quality base. No. So there is a balance of you need to keep in terms of how to create a decent quality, how to arrive at decent quality at the same time in a competitive price. So that's pretty that's very very important. In terms of efficiency, yeah, of course we'll have to I think it's since, as I said, idea is that there's a price conscious. A lot of customers in India is more or less a very price conscious rather than sustainability conscious in a way. So you'll have to work backward in a way, in terms of your production, your raw material procurements, your all other process. How do you, how do you make it, how do you make it much more efficient and cost, cost competitive? Otherwise, to especially to work with larger brands or larger volumes. I don't know what's that he understood.
Perfect. I think Chinmay also has his raised hand. Do you want to jump in, Chinmay?
Yeah, actually, so not always green innovation is costly, is what we believed, and actually we demonstrated also some time back. It goes back actually as a scientist, I would tell you that it's like revisiting your first principle. And from the first principle thinking is what we did on the hand wash category. So sometime back we were also having this, while we enter into hand wash, how do we make it more like democratize it? How do we push that habit of hygiene into Indian consumer? And on that, always we were thinking that we don't have a price advantage into the market. We won't be able to enter into it. Consumers possibly will not be able to willing more than 20 rupees on a hand wash, and everything was not fitting in. Then what we launched was a magic hand wash. And if you see the magic hand wash, it's basically a 7 gram kind of a sachet, which gets sold in a powder format. And all consumer has to do is any hand wash bottle that they have to just empty that sachet, fill it with the water. Now, what has happened through this approach, if you see, a lot of input material costs that used to get from engaged from my factory, that every time I have to put it into a fresh bottle, the fresh pump, right? That dependency has gone. A lot of input material cost has gone. Also, it is more circular because now you are actually investing into less of a plastic. Your transport efficiency has improved significantly. Your market reach has improved significantly. The shelf on which you were earlier stacking only say 10 bottles, right now you are actually able to stack 10 cartons which are full of
Yeah.
multiple pouches. Just self presence has actually improved significantly. So I would say that some of these kind of thought processes would help in terms of bringing your green innovation much more cost efficient. I mean, it's a mindset, I would say.
Yeah. Perfect. I think on efficiency itself, there's another question. Kavishri pointed out to the fact that PET bottle, when it goes for recycling, more than 50% doesn't even enter the recycling space. What is your opinion? Once they get recycled, they may not be infinitely recyclable as well, given limitations of how the technology works. How would you look at non-chemical technologies which can convert PET waste back to raw materials? Anybody wants to take this? Saurabh?
Yeah, based on our limited understanding of the sector, so PET bottle to bottle food grade PET uses your authorized machines, FD approved machines like Starlinger, Arima, NGR. They basically go back to your food grade packaging or food grade bottles. Now, even if they come back 6 to 7 times, is what science says that can be recycled back. And even after that, it is mixed with different kind of polymer. It's not like that the same bottle is coming back. It loses its strength in seven times and then going back. It is mixed and match of different polymers of different aging. So it's not that the polymer will certainly go back. And if the mechanical strength it gets losing, there are additives or virgin mix which can happen with those kind of materials. And on the collection front, what we know is PET is one of the highest collected polymer in the country, more than 90%, to be honest. So that probably needs to be checked that from where that 50% number is coming from.
But
Yeah.
Nihal, I may just add in terms of ET specifically. So that also differ from region to region. I work in Andaman Nicobar Islands, where PET is banned, and it was only recovered less than 10%, and now only 2 liter and above PET is already allowed. So I'm saying maybe in urban areas and larger centers, but if you look at remote areas, hill stations, such islands. I also work in Lakshadweep Islands and all. 100. I mean, so PET is of course one of the highest valued material, much more stabilized and established and all. But it may differ from some of the geographies, especially remote geographies, rural geographies and all. But of course, well, it's not. Of course, it's much higher than that 50% in terms of collection front. But some regions, of course, it's really collection of PET is also not viable and backward. But urban centers, it's one of the highest collected material.
Yeah.
I would
Perfect.
just
I think
add Nihal onto it. Sorry,
yeah.
but see, till the time you don't see any dilution in the virgin material quantities, right? Till the time I won't say that the concentration of PCR is actually increasing, correct? Because the question of fifth generation, sixth generation recyclate comes only when you see that your virgin material input has actually gone down. Right now, India, I guess, is far off from that kind of a situation. Once we see that situation wherein you have clear cut indicator that your virgin material production has figures have dropped down and those have been replaced by say a PCR material, that is where you would see that kind of a scenario, and that is when we can actually revisit it. Right now, I guess there is a lot of under participation and we don't have to worry about it.
Perfect. I think we'll take one last question, and that question is to you again, Chinmay. You mentioned that reverse logistics across India's wide geography makes reuse systems challenging. In refill models where consumers retain and use their own containers, reverse logistics is largely eliminated. How do you see such consumer managed refill systems as a viable pathway for brands to scale the reuse in India?
I didn't get what do you mean by consumer managed system?
In a way that the reverse logistics in some sense is completely eliminated. Maybe community led models
Yeah.
where collection systems are slightly more decentralized, things like this.
Yeah, definitely. So that's what I was actually coming to. What we and that's why I was actually trying to propose that some kind of an OEM kind of a model. Uh, I often try to kind of draw that parallel how kind of cola industry did it 2-3 decades back, right? When they actually came up with this idea of a fountain soda, right? So what they actually did was putting some kind of a concentrate dispenser and then having a premix kind of a thing, which enables you to dispense the product at the time of usage, right? What actually the threat that comes for any kind of a brand owner is you having some kind of a equity dilution in the market, because that actually gives a space for a lot of unbranded kind of products to kind of uh, uh, take up your volumes, right? Because your equity is your packaging, and that is where it will take some time to come up with the right kind of a solution and approach how we can take this up, because once you are not packing in your packaging, you're actually trying to kind of dilute your identity into that space. Uh, but we are ready to take that kind of a pilot if any of that infrastructure is kind of ready for deployment.
Perfect. I think with that, in some sense, we have overshot also, but I think I see the comment section and it's like there is a discussion in itself happening in the comment section, and that's always amazing and good news. But Jabir, Saurabh, Chinmaya, thank you so much. I know that post this session, a lot of people will slide into your DMs on LinkedIn. At least they should. We'll also, I think, be in touch with you on, I think, the program and all of the different startups, wonderful startups that will be taken in. But I just wanted to take this time to thank you for joining this panel. Hopefully, you also had a wonderful conversation, and we'll all stay in touch. Thank you so much for making it happen.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, Nihal. Thanks, everyone.
See you. See you. See you.
See you.
Thank you.